Awesome. Well, to kick it off, I'd love to have our three amazing panelists introduce themselves, share a little bit more about what they're doing in this space, and then we'll get into the topics around Ethereum. All right. Akshat, why don't you kick us off?
Happy to do a quick intro. So my name is Akshat. I'm head of investments for Arthur Hayes' family office, Maelstrom. We got up and running about a year and a half ago, and since that time we've been focused on mostly DeFi, anything where Arthur can help tell a story, and infrastructure.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm Nicola of Lemniscap, crypto native venture fund, early stage, seed pre-seed, since late 2017, 2018. So we have seen some things going around.
Great.
Hello, my name is Pauline. I am the technical lead for Reinvent DAO. So we are a startup tokenizing intellectual property. And I'm also a developer relation engineer for Mantle, which is a layer 2 protocol. So.
Awesome. Thank you. So I guess first to get into it, no one has killed Ethereum yet. So I guess maybe for all three panelists, we're going into a new cycle. Do you see any Ethereum killers? Are there any L1s you guys are excited about? Love to hear your thoughts. Pauline, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. So we just spoke about it today in the title, saying that, yeah, we should maybe reframe it like nobody has killed Ethereum, right? Instead of an Ethereum killer, that's a 2017 title that will be possible. I think the ecosystem is still very interesting in that sense, but I think we can go into a sort of a consensus here that, yeah, it's a bit hard to see how Ethereum could potentially be killed anytime soon. And I think it's giving a fair take to say that, you know, even if the ecosystem grows bigger, you have plenty of layer 2, layer 3, whatever we have today. But you have some really good layer 1 as well. But yeah, from that saying that there's a killer, probably not soon, yeah.
Yeah, or panel Ethereum killers, let's try again another time. Yeah, I mean, we were there where those years where really everybody wanted to build the next Ethereum, and it felt like a sequence and what's next, and we have to try it. Yeah, you can't really summarize 5 years of investing on layer 1s in 5 minutes. But for sure, something that I found very interesting is that everybody was looking around for the Ethereum killer, and I think everybody got it wrong. So let me tell you that I think in terms of ecosystems, everybody, I think, thought it was Polkadot back then. That might be a surprise, but you know, invested on the very early ones, things on Polkadot, Takala, Moonbeam, and Manta, whatever. And then Solana came in and said, guys, you're all wrong, right? And investors rushed into Solana, and there were some external factors that made Solana, but it became Solana. And then people started basically chasing the new Solana, right? And went to Near, and went to the Aptos, and went to the Suis. But I'll be brief, and I just say I think investors got a little bit smarter throughout the cycles. We try to actually look at what's sensible, like what's being built, what's real, and we'll talk maybe later about what needs to be there for, you know, investors to really be sold and buy in.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just chime in a couple thoughts here. I think there was once upon a time where you could basically take Ethereum and improve certain aspects of it, like Solana, right, and focus on one or two things, do that better, and that was enough. This next cycle is going to be a lot harder. You can't just take, you know, like throughput and just say, I'm going to make it 5 times faster, 3 times faster, or whatever, and that's enough to be the next Solana. I think at this point, it's more about the quality of projects that you're able to attract to your layer 1 or layer 2 or scaling solution, whatever it is. So I think, like, you know, for example, Say, you see they've got a very differentiated approach to who they're focusing on in terms of getting mind share of ideas and then projects to build upon that. Each one will have their own subculture, like a little clique, and kill it in that space. And hopefully that is, you know, it's not zero sum with Ethereum. I think it's kind of the opposite. It'll probably benefit the entire ecosystem.
Awesome. Just going off of one thing you said, Nicola, I thought was quite interesting is you mentioned some of the other L1s haven't gotten it right. They tried to kill Ethereum, they haven't gotten it right. I guess when you're looking at new up-and-coming L1s, from your perspective, what are some of those things you're looking at that you'd want to make sure that they have in place to be in a position where they can be successful in this next run? Or what are some of those red flags you're seeing that you hopefully don't want to see in some of these new income chains?
I think red flags is, to be frank, hype, which is one, comes as a byproduct, but is actually that. And when there is not much behind it, but when there is a lack of identity, that's probably an issue that we have identified. And this came with investments that, in L1s that didn't really find an identity throughout the years. So that's probably the killer for the killer, like not having a strong identity and not knowing where you're going and changing your narrative very, very often. What makes a potential Ethereum killer probably is a strong identity, so everything the opposite, a strong identity, a very strong community, and some novelty, which, it's a coin with two faces, right? Because you miss the mindshare, you miss the tooling, but you have novelty. So if we start from the very end, I think we were very lucky to be extremely convinced on Monad, which we invested in one of the very early rounds. It's public that now it's a multi-billion, by paradigm. And there was nothing there. There's still nothing there, to be frank. So let me be honest. There's a DevNet out, but nobody have seen it. So, but how can it be like 2 or 3 billion, right? A phenomenal community building, super strong narrative, and some novelty which is there, right? Parallel execution, super scaling, pipelining. So there are some things that make it very attractive. And the combination of the two, novelty and community, I think are the characteristic you want to see.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so, Pauline, I think we had a great discussion the other day about this already, but I'm very curious from your perspective as a builder, what are some of the things that you consider when thinking about building on and scaling on Ethereum or an EVM chain versus potentially other up-and-coming L1s?
Yeah, I think one of the first thing, so I can talk from a builder point of view and also from a tech lead, because the choices are not always the same, right? Like as a builder, like as a hacker, what you want is that first you want to go to a layer 1 or layer 2, whatever you choose, but you have few criteria that are quite important. Like if I go to a layer 2, and it's going to be coded in a language that, like, nobody has done anything before. Like, I have to learn everything. Like, the learning curve is too big, too difficult. Most of the developers are going to be turned off straight away. Like, it's very difficult. If I come in and I already know I know Solidity, I know it's EVM compatible, then I can start building my stuff very quickly. So that is like a first argument. So, like, you have some great layer 1, but if I go to Sui, for instance, I need to learn Sui Move. If I go to Aptos, the entry is already a difficulty. And for a builder, we want to code. We want to ship fast. Like, that's the thrill, right? So, like, this kind of thing is like criteria that are quite important. And they're similar for a tech lead. If I can't find any developer that is going to ship my product because either it's the tech team in the layer 1 is not super operational, their documentation is not great, they don't have a lot of tech support, because sometimes those layer 1, they still testnet, right? So they're figuring out, they're figuring out who is going to be in charge of that. And so I'm here with my developer, and they can't find solution, they can't reach out to someone, or if they do, it's not like ideal, then I'm going to go for EVM compatible. Like, it's something where I'm going to find better developer people that would be, a bit more seasoned it's going to be easier for me. So this kind of criteria are quite important. And to go back on Solana, for instance, if you use Rust, it's already a better option because it's more knowledge out there, right? So I would say that it's one of the main things when you're a builder, when you're tech lead, you try to make it easy and efficient for everyone. And this kind of criteria, they are very hard to just it's very hard to counterbalance that. That would be my take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm team EVM compatibility. I don't see why there's a need to go beyond that. And obviously, I'm not a builder, so it's interesting to hear your perspective on that.
But but just about that, for instance, is that with the new upgrade, so Ethereum had an upgrade 2 weeks ago. It's called Denkun upgrade, and with that upgrade, they made basically, because of blobs, to not get into technicalities, but basically it was made for layer 2 protocol to go as cheap in terms of transaction fees, so gas fee. So now, basically what was important for a layer 1 is that you could everything was fast, everything was cheap. You go on Solana, nothing was as fast, but sometimes it's a bit down. But yeah, anyway, it's still a good product. But today, you go to Optimism or Arbitrum or Mantle, I mean, it's 0.01, it's so cheap, and it's fast because of this upgrade. So I need to see from a layer 1, okay, what else can you bring, right? If it's not because it's fast, if it's not because it's cheap, if it's not because, your language is not, something I know, what is your added value? And I think he said it very well. Solana is a community. Everybody wants to work with them. They deliver on that. It's no doubt. So yeah, maybe that is that.
Great. I think also one of the burning questions I have is this cycle where we continue to invest in new L1s, do you feel like this is potentially coming to an end sooner than later? Are there enough solutions out there? Eventually, will that novelty wear off and maybe it is just community? I'm curious from an investor's perspective, do you think that there'll continue to be more and more opportunities in the space, or is this maybe something for the next few years that dries up?
Look, to be frank, I'll take this. It's really seasonal, it's cyclical, and it's depending on the market phases. So I remember very clearly in 2020, end of 2021, 2022, I mean, there was a real Ethereum strategy. Everybody was leaving anything that was not Ethereum and go on Ethereum, and they needed an Ethereum strategy. It was, the alternatives was, you're dying. And we had a portfolio company that actually pivoted completely to productize something that they had to build themselves to tap into Ethereum from near, in this case. And then building a multi-VM where, Rust people can actually, operate simply in a sense. And I think it's in the investor risk appetite to a certain extent. So it will always go on phases. When we have seen too much, when we risk it too much, when we want to be on a safer bet, we go back to Ethereum, and we go back where liquidity is, where the mindshare is, when things are simple, and when we have more room for experiments and more cash to spend, in a sense, as investors and as the ecosystem in general, you can risk. So I think we'll keep seeing those cycles.
Nice. Akshat, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're on the hunt for is a project that kind of closes the loop and makes every L2 100,000 TPS plus, right? Just one underlying substrate that just kind of brings it all together. So there's no reason anymore for more and more L2s to pop up out of nowhere. We're definitely saturated on the L1s, I think. On the L2s, I mean, it's just getting silly. But there's money to be made, so I guess that's why it continues, especially with point farming. But yeah, I think it'd be great to see something that can harmonize the way that right now every user has to have, every retail user basically has to have 6 different gas tokens are constantly monitoring and keeping track of. It shouldn't have to be that way. There should be kind of like one underlying gas token that serves all of these. There should be parallelization, kind of like what Monad is doing, but for all of the above as like a B2B offering, so that this cycle just kind of like ends, I think.
Awesome. I think one of the other things I've heard a few times during this panel is community. So I'm curious, Pauline, from your perspective, having exposure to a few of the different L1s and L2s, besides Solana, are there any others that you think are doing a great job in terms of building the community or making it potentially easier for builders or more attractive?
That's a good question because I think the job of a DevRel engineer is to build a developer community, right? So it's basically trying to, anyone who wants to build on your protocol, they come up to you and you have to guide them. It's from the first step, how they deploy, how they build, to the ideation, and to you incube them, and then you try to, everybody's looking for the killer app, right? So every single protocol is after that. I think the community, that Solana is great. I think some are doing really well. I would say that, recently I think Eigenlayer is doing really well in terms of community, but there's not, in terms of layer 2, I think optimism is really good. You have, I would say that. No, I try to not be biased on the layer 2 here. I really.
You can share with us. We won't tell anyone.
No, but for instance, Near has done a pretty good job with the community. I found that the only thing is that I built with Near, and one of the things is that it was not as easy as we hoped it was going to be. But I think the community was quite strong, especially in the bear market, and that's another. I guess I am not the money person in this panel, but I think if you can keep your community and your builders during a bear market and you can sustain this amount, it's a big plus for a layer 1 or a layer 2, because it also means that even when there is no crazy price on shit coins and meme coins going around, they're still around that they build, and that means that what you're doing is a pretty good job, I think.
Yeah, very good point. I think you actually mentioned Eigenlayer. It's quite an interesting one. So, it's always easier for me in general to look at the portfolio. Likely enough, we can say the Monad, Eigenlayer, they are. But we also had something that wasn't really that successful, obviously. I'll make some names, no problem. But before that, I think the most important thing is owning the narrative. We have Celestia, thankfully also another portfolio company, and that's very important. When you are a flagship project that is carrying sort of the flag of something, that's very important. So Monad obviously for parallel execution, Eigenlayer for staking, Celestia for modularity in general. That's very important. Again, to go back to lack of identity, we invested very early in 2018 on Algorand, which it went nowhere, even if the tech, you can argue was pretty good. It's still pretty good, and I know Silvio, we speak Italian, thankfully, then few would understand my comments to him, but they never had the courage to be something, right? And they were, left and right, and that's very confusing for the community. And you need to really own a narrative, and I think Eigenlayer is owning absolutely if you see Shram, he's everywhere. He would convince anybody to be an AVS. Even my mom could be an AVS tomorrow, right? So yes. It's you really a flag of yourself. Of course, he's going to have AVSs. That a lot of them won't probably even make sense, but you're really carrying a flag of a narrative. That's very important, at least from what we've seen.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think you should narrow your focus and kill it with one niche community. You see some projects have done that well, like Barachain, for example.
Yeah, very.
Just like,
Yep.
or even like back in the day, Cosmos, they just like have a very niche community that they just cornered. Focus on that and then build from there. But I think anyone who tries to go like this generalist kind of route, even from a cultural standpoint, storytelling standpoint, is going to have a harder time.
One last thing to add, we invested on Avalanche very early, and they are phenomenal in my opinion. The head of the BD for DeFi gaming, they are extremely aggressive. And we were introducing projects on portfolio, and there's another Italian guy, or tries to be, that he told me, Nicola, don't intro projects that are building somewhere else. We don't want them. It's very rare to find an ecosystem that says we want native people. We don't want a copycat. We don't want somebody that just comes here to bring more liquidity, whatever. We want people for Avalanche. If they're not born for Avalanche, we don't want them. Which in a very nascent ecosystem is quite rare. Yeah, it's not huge as an ecosystem, but you see how building the community and the native ecosystem is a priority for certain layer ones or ecosystem.
Yeah, I think I've had some discussions with them in the past, and I found it quite fascinating that they emphasize heavily hacker houses, build-a-thons. They want to get developers into the ecosystem early and double down on them, which, as you mentioned, there's a number of chains that are very happy with later stage projects coming on and bridging. So it is quite interesting seeing that.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point because we do this with Mental, for instance. We have something called Sozu House, and Sozu House is like basically a bunch of gigabrain developer gathering once in a while, and we kind of let them build things like whatever you want, whatever. But they've been around forever, and they do their own things. They do different things. But every single ETH Global Hackathon, they will come and there's like, hey, when is the next hacker house? When is the next? And that it shows that you have a really good relationship with your builders, right? Because at the end of the day, you're a protocol. I guess you guys won't agree, but without a builder, if nobody built anything on your chain, you're not worth much. At some point, someone needs to deploy, to do things. So if you let's take anyone in and just hope that there's someone that will be great at it, it's different. If you build a community like a native, like Avalanche did, it shows that you're valuing them, right? You give them value to the builder. And I think people always come back. The day they might not come maybe the first year, but one day they have a really good thing and they come back to you because you took care of them, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I think maybe just framing this a little bit differently, I'm curious from all three of your perspectives, maybe not an Ethereum killer, but do you see in this next cycle an opportunity, I'd say, for maybe emerging L1s to really overtake some of those incumbents, whether it's Ethereum or some of the more established chains? Do you think that that's something we'll likely see, or do you think that that's a pretty tall task, given that some of these communities are already so well established?
Well, taking Ethereum and Solana is very hard, to be honest. Not impossible, but hard. Place for others like Monad for sure. I mean, it's a good start, right? So that's for sure. I think we will have more, Eigenlayer is a good example. I think investors and cycles needs a new narrative that are untapped. And this middle layer, restaking, those AVS is something new. We don't know how the economics are going to be. It's pretty intuitive. It touches the retail. It needs to be a perfect storm of elements to make it happen, right? So it's possible, but maybe on the top 5. I think getting to Solana and Ethereum will be pretty hard.
Yeah, I think it's going to follow the use cases. So for example, DePIN became a narrative recently. I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's re-emerged as a narrative, repackaged. There's going to be certain L1s that serve that use case much better. as we find more use cases, whether it's like reg coins or if there's CBDCs actually eventually take off, we'll see. They're all going to have different use cases that will need L1s to support that. So I think it's going to follow that rather than build it and they will come.
Great. So we just have a few minutes left. So maybe I'll just leave it for all three of you to share anything else that we haven't covered, because we've covered quite a bit in this short amount of time around your thoughts about this next cycle. Not shilling any financial advice, of course, but what are some of the things that you're bullish on in terms of L1s or anything that you'd like to potentially predict that we might see in the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think one thing that we didn't mention so much because it was more like layer 1, layer 2, and we just assume that it's always Ethereum based, right? But in terms of new narrative, you have this layer 2 Bitcoin EVM compatible that have come out, and then they've been around, and then there's as you said, it's gonna sell like cream because it's appealing, but what does it do technically, and what does it, that's also interesting. And I think, I don't know exactly about the coming up market, but one thing that Ethereum does so well is the fact that they never push anyone, they never, Vitalik, for instance, he would never say, don't go for that chain. It's if you are able to solve this better than us, do it. Come, it's open source, there's an Ethereum Foundation, anyone can contribute. You can go tomorrow in a repo, you could do that. So Ethereum is just they don't take this position where they are the main people and everybody else has to somehow, adapt to that. And I think that is the strength, really, because even if everybody wants to go and try or mimic or something, they're really built for an ecosystem, and they're fine. You have a better solution, go ahead, And I think that's why we see a lot of different narratives. And actually, I think it's exciting. It's not boring,
Yeah, I think. Look, I'll pick up on his comments on use cases. Very good point. I think now, in terms of consolidation and fragmentation, there's so much offering, right? There is roll-up as a service. There is app chains. There is layer 1s coming out, and I think a lot of developers are choices, and we'll go for network effects. And we might see really ecosystem forming because of use cases, right? And would make quite a bit of sense to create those niche ecosystem. I love Say, I love Jeff, I love Layer N. Those are all potential, infrastructure that can really attract network effects, and I see that happening. However, there's one thing that throughout the panel I wanted to mention, I'll mention now. We had one example in the portfolio that being early, it's actually not super, it's not really an advantage. We had one project on Starknet, which was one of the very first building on Starknet. He built 80% of it, and then Starknet came out with the Caro 1.0, I think, and richly they had to trash 90% of the code, and then they were said that hey, you can do this, right? And we have built everything, help us. And there was really not much of support, not because of Starknet. What I'm saying is it's a very, very difficult trade-off to assess when you start building on an ecosystem, because as she said, things can change very quickly, and it's very hard to assess what's going to change, what's not going to change, and it's a big risk to be the first, in a sense.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that. There's definitely a first mover disadvantage often in this industry. As far as the cycle overall, I think once you start seeing a lot of copycat things happen, like a million L2s all kind of doing the same thing, or you have, as you mentioned, kind of DeFi on Bitcoin, right? These Bitcoin EVM crossover projects, Bitcoin L2s, things like that, and you just see a massive glut of them. That's when it's time to start thinking about your exit strategy as a personal investor, as a retail investor. A lot of the professional investors have already moved on to the next narrative. They're not backing 2 or 3 or 4 Bitcoin L2s. So just be wary as a personal investor, as a private investor. You can ride the narrative. There's definitely momentum here, but yeah, just be aware that that's not what professional investors are looking at the moment.
And do we have a minute? 1 minute? 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Yeah, okay. One
Yours.
thing also is that it's always about this new narrative and so on. But like technically today, a lot of layer 2, like OP stack, like whatever, what you say, you know, there's a lot of fragmentation in the liquidity. People don't know how to use bridge, like, you know, so there's actually a lot of things we need to solve in our existing stack. So people are always searching, because I guess that's the point of VC. They're searching for like the new thing, the new narrative. But yeah, we are not far from perfect today. Like, you know, UX can be better, bridges is a difficult thing. And so sometimes I feel like, why don't you make that like much, much better and then move on to like something different? But I guess that's not where the money is. I don't know.
You need something new
That's it.
to believe.
That's it.
I work for the
Just
engineering
about
team.
believing. Yeah.
Awesome. Akshat, Nicola, Pauline,
Yeah.
thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.